Okay, man, there we go. Like you know, I'm just this guy that welcome to my study for understanding some of the lessons of English that I'm gonna teach you. So, yes, the lesson of today will be like you know about just the computer science. I already said why. I said that the computer science will be very helpful for understanding the mechanical engineering in more details, as you can understand, because the I would say the future lessons that we are gonna study will be about the fact of converting the signals, the fact of using the computer characteristics or the computer capabilities for integrating that into the mechanical engineering. So this is also very important for us to study about the computer, you know, because of the fact that the computer is everywhere. So this is important for us to be just in our time, if I can say yes. So in doing that, in just studying the computer, we are going to study many things at home because uh, this is not only, I would say, concentrated only in the computer, but there is some other things that you will understand that will be helpful for you to understand, for example, the AI, the robotic, and yes, and because of the fact that I already talked about that the mechanical engineering needs also the characteristics of the computer, the fact of making the design of the cars, for example, you are going to use the application software that will be very helpful for making the precisions about how we are going to make the car in the reality. So this is very important for us to study that. And yes, the lessons are just oriented in a way of understanding, I would say, the essentials about the computer that we can use in the mechanical engineering. I will not study everything about that. I will study just some of the lessons that I just pointed. I make some of the points and some of the lessons that I just consider myself as interesting. So yes, that will be helpful. And you don't have to be worried, in fact. These lessons are almost explaining everything about the computer, so don't worry. We are not going to study, for example, the components of the computer. You know already what is the computer. You already know that there is a screen, there is some of the things like that. So we are going to study mostly about the working of the computer and how the computer is working, how the computer is able to do this work. We already studied the operating system, so I mean that this is also a lesson that you have to study further for making ourselves understanding the functions of the computer, or say the working of the computer at home. Because to understand the functions of the operating system will be very helpful. Like I said you before, the operating system is only the interface that just allows us to use the computer in a good way, as you can understand. So this is the interface between the hardware and the software. This is thanks to that you are able to use the computer. The first lesson was about the CPU, as you can, you already know, the CPU, the central processing unit. You already studied many things about that, as you can know. The fact is just that the CPU is considered as the brain of the computer. This is like us, like the human beings. If we are just making sort of doing some of the things like that, if I'm just making some of the movements like that, this is thanks to my brain. And this is the same concept with the computer. The computer is not like us. I would say the computer is just a machine that will help you do some of the, I would say, yes, some of the jobs like that. For example, I want to make the PPG, the presentation PowerPoint. I mean that I have to use the computer. I want to do a document in Word with more details. I will use the computer for these reasons. And for talking about the robot is also the computer, and it has the CPU instead of the brain. This is the CPU, and I talked about the fact that this is programmed by us, and the instructions that we give to the CPU are just stored in the cache memory, and then are just distributed to the yes, I would say that not only the instructions but also the results from these instructions. And in the way that when you are going to use the computer again, we can do the same operations that before. So as you can understand, so the same results that before will be given just at the good time, just in a good way. So this is just like that the computer is working. You will give the instructions, the users will give the instructions for saying that you have to do such jobs, and such things, and then the computer will execute that again and again and again and again. This is just like that. It doesn't have any new things. This is already programmed by the users, by the computer at home, and the results are stored in the cache memory. So I talked about that the fact that the computer is just constituted of the memory unit. This is thanks to the memory unit that you are able to use the computer at home. Because if the computer is not able to store the results, the instructions, we cannot use that. It is impossible. So what we can do, this is just to be sure that the CPU will be able to store that before, and then to control that. The control unit is the unit of the computer that is responsible of all the operations, as you can understand. It has to control, it has to make it sort of all the operations will be done in a good time. For example, when we talk about the fact that there is one of the operation that is more heavy than I would say more heavy in just the type of the memory concept. So more heavy than one other. So we have to know which type of operation will come first. So this is the job of the computer. This is thanks to the CPU that it is possible. And then we talked about the arithmetic and logic unit. The arithmetic and logic unit, this is, I would say, the language programmation, if I can say it like that. This is thanks to the computer is able to understand what we want to ask. So the programmation, as you can see, the language programmation is just a constitutive of a lot of signs, a lot of numbers, and then you are gonna make it sort of the computer will understand that. So this is just thanks to the arithmetic and logic unit that the computer is able to understand, just through the language that will appear like the I would say, like the arithmetic operations, like for example, the addition, the subtraction, the multiplication, the division, and so on and so forth. And for the logic, the fact of making it sort of that will be compare, merging, and solving, and things like that. So the data and instructions have to be written just following this type of way, this type of language. The language of the computer is only about just the fact of about the mathematics, if I can say, yes, about just the mathematics. So this is like that. The point of the computer is working. Now, what you are going to study will be about the operating system. So, what is the operating system? Okay, let's see. The operating system is a program with the following features. The operating system is a program that acts as an interface to manage overall resources of and operations of the computer. Yes, so this is the job of the operation system. Firstly, this is just to act as an interface for managing overall of resources and operations of the computer to manage all the resources. When we talk about the resources, this is about just uh, the concepts or even the operations that are stored into the memory, as you can understand, and the operations also, yes, and to manage also the operations. This is the example that I talked about when I say that there is one of the operations that have to be firstly before the other, because the I would say the second operation is just considered has too much heavy, and it takes too much time for being executed, and the first has to be done, so this is just like that. The operation system will manage sort of everything will be done just like that. And yes, in fact, I will talk about that because this is about just the way that the computer will be able to manage every operations of at all in its own. So it is an integrated set of specialized programs used to manage overall resources and operations, and it acts as an interface between the software and the computer hardware. Yes, so this is the interface. This is about the coordination of the software and the hardware. It is a specialized software that controls and monitors the execution of all other programs that reside in the computer, including application programs and other software. Yes, application programs and other system software. Yes, so this is a software that will be able to monitor, to execute it, like they say, to execute the programs that reside of the computer, like for example the application programs and the other system software. When we talk about the fact that when I will just install my system software, like for example Microsoft, I have to be sure that then there will be the coordination with all the hardware of the computer. For example, when I will take A, then it will appear A. When I will take Z, then it will appear Z. So this is about just the way that it has to work like that. And then, I mean that, yes, and this is the job. I mean that just thanks to that, we can the users can manipulate the computer as good as possible. And then now study the objectives of the operating system to make the computer system convenient to use in an efficient manner, to hide the details of the hardware resources from the users. Yes, if the users just saw so many details, because there is so many details about the way that the computer will execute that, and we don't need that. The user don't need that. So what we need, this is just the results, as you can understand, the results only, not that it gives about just the details about how it was executed. No, we don't need that. We just need to get the results, and then you're gonna just use the information as good as you want. That's all. Because there are so many things that, yes, for us it will be confused. This is like for example the first operating system. For the first operating system, that was very complicated because you have to memorize some of the instructions, some of the data for what you manipulate the computer. So you can guess how that was very difficult, because sometimes you can even do some mistakes. If you do one mistakes, you have to restart the all programs from the beginning. So for these reasons, I mean that for everyone that was not so accurate. So for this reasons, the computer will hide the details and to act as an intermediary between the hardware and its users, making it easier for the users to access and use other resources, to manage the resources of the computer system, to keep track of who is using which resource, quenching resource requests, and mediating conflicting requests from different programs and users, to provide efficient and fair sharing of resources among users and programs. At this case, we talk about the fact of sharing, so the fact of using the internet or the intranet, the fact of sharing your resources from one computer to another. This is also the job of the operating system, in a way that we are going to make the selection of which resources we want to share and which resources we want to get. So this is yes, it is very important to have an operation system that is able to work as good as you can see about the functions, the objectives of the operation system. So now let's study the characteristics of the operation system. The characteristic uh, will be represented by the, I would say, uh, some of the concepts, if I can say it like that. Yes, some of the concepts. For example, the memory, fact of storing, uh, yes, to keep track of primary memory. At this case, this is about the fact of keeping track of the primary memory, because as you just to know, the fact is just that the primary memory is the memory that will get the informations or the instructions directly for what it will be controlled. Firstly, it will be controlled and then stored in the primary memory, as you can see. So it has to keep track the primary memory, for example, what part of it is in use by whom, what part is not in use, and allocates the memory when a process or program requests it. Yes. Yes, when it requests it, because every operations at all are firstly stored in the primary memory. The results of the operations and the instructions at all are stored in the primary memory. So this is important to give to the users the way of using the same operations and again, because we will need to do these operations when it will require. For example, when I will do the video like that, I will use the application software. So it is important for the operating system to get a sort of, I will be able to use that every time I want, and from, I would say, from every hour, any hour that I want. For example, I can use that at 22, yes, 22 on clock, or even at 21 on clock. The computer has to be ready, has to keep in track, so it has to keep the same operation for what I use that. In what it is important for the computer, this is just to be supplied, and then it has to work just like that. So a good operation system is able to keep track of the memory, and yes, to get this sort of every operations will be done when it has to be used. And the processor management. Yes, the fact of allocating the processor, so the CPU. The processor, the CPU can be called the microprocessor or the processor. To a process and geolocates the processor when it is no longer required. Yes. So as you can see, the fact is just that the CPU has to control the operations. And so the operating system has to get in sort of allocates the CPU in a way that the control or even the storing or even any operations like that will be done by the CPU when it is required. And then to geolocate is that when there is no longer required. And the device management keeps track of all the devices. This is also called the I/O controller that decides which process get the device when and for how much time. Yes, about the fact of making the device. For example, when I'm using the hardwares like that, I will use the button A. So when I will push the button A, so this is the device. So the operating system has to be ready for what the software here will appear also the button A. The coordination between the hardware and the hardware, the software and the hardware has to be very, I would say, very accurate for what we use that as, yes, as long as possible. And they say that this is about the fact of controlling the devices, which process gets the device when and for how much time. Yes. And the file management, the fact of allocates and geolocates the resources and decides who gets the resources. Yes. For example, I want to share the resources from one computer to another. The operation system has to be able to allocate these resources that I'm asking, and then to, yes, to show me that for what I just make the selection of which type of resources I want to share. And the security prevents unauthorized access to programs and data by means of password and other similar techniques. Yes, to make the security of the computer. The job accounting keeps track of time and resources used by various jobs and or users. Yes, which type of jobs has to be done, and for, no, this is about the time and resources used by various job and our users. Yes, the way that you are gonna just to use that, the operations, for example, that has to be used will just to keep a certain amount of time. So this is important to respect certain amount of time and also for the resources. So yes, to control all over system performance, records delays between the requests for a service and from the system. Interaction with the operators. Yes, to make the interaction with us, for example, to may take place via the console of the computer in form of the instructions. Uh, the operation system acknowledges the same, does the corresponding action, and informs the operation by a display screen. Yes. So the way that I will just I will write my instructions for what they will be executed. That has to be also managed by the operation system. The error detection aids the fact of detecting some of the mistakes, some of the excuse me, the virus is the virus. viruses, and so some of the errors like that that has to be avoided for what it will not make the destroy of the destroying of the computer at all, the computer system, and the coordination between other software and the users. We talked about here the application software. Coordination and achievement of compilers, interpreters, assemblers, and other software to various users of the computer systems. Yes, the coordination with for example, when because of the fact that we don't use mostly the assemblers or the interpreters, as you can understand, the fact is just that they are just no longer used because the assembler will just convert the assembler level language into machine code. But what we want, this is to get the machine codes as fast as possible. So what we use mostly here, this is about the compiler. So for example, when I will write my instructions or even some other things like that, my dad does or some things like that for the first time to the computer, I have to get the results as fast as possible, and I have to be able to get that just at one time. So yes, we use the compiler for this reason because this is not line by line. This is all the programs that will be executed at one time, and then it will be stored for not only not yes for no longer time, if I can say it like that. It will not take a long time for what they will be executed. Yeah, so this is the end of our lesson. I will just say that see you tomorrow, and thank you for listening.